Hotel chains keep Bibles in the nightstands of the rooms, but this one chain doesn't. And this man named Khalil emailed and said that this was the creepiest job he ever worked. And he had worked front desk jobs at hotels before. So when he took this job as the night shift guy, front desk attendant, he thought it was just going to be like any of the others, answering guest complaints, checking in guests, managing reservations, solving the occasional problem, and basically just scrolling his phone until sunrise, right? Wrong. He only lasted at this job for 2 weeks, and he wanted to point out that this is not some boutique hotel in the middle of nowhere. This is a major chain that you see off major interstates with identical lobbies, identical carpets. They pride themselves on consistency. It's not a five-star hotel by any means, but it is a hotel that caters to travelers who recognize the brand name. So he does his training, which all takes place in the daytime, and then comes the night where he's going to be managing on his own. The manager is clocking out, and she hands him a laminated piece of paper that has the night shift rules. Glances at it before she leaves, and it seems typical, so he doesn't really look too much into it. It's like no personal visitors, keep the lobby lights dim after 1 a.m., log all maintenance requests before actually calling maintenance, typical stuff. After she leaves, it's like a weeknight, it's slow, he's looking at it again, and there's some rules on there that seem strange. One of them says, don't walk past the mirror near the breakfast buffet after 2 a.m. Another said, if a guest reports whispering from the vents, document it but do not report. And finally, all Bibles must remain locked in the front office. All capitals, it said, do not place them in the guest rooms. The last line threw him because in all of the hotels that he had worked at, they all had Gideon Bibles in the nightstands. It's practically tradition in the hotel industry, and so he sort of makes a mental note to ask about it later. And a little while goes by, he checks a few guests in, no problems, when his supervisor calls the hotel front desk and says, hey, I was just checking in on you, how's your first night going? And he's like, oh, everything's good. Hey, quick question, what's up with the Bibles? Said, I was looking over the rules and it just didn't make sense to me because everywhere else I've worked, we keep them in the rooms. And she just says, oh yeah, it's something corporate policy. We stopped doing that a few years ago. And he's like, why? Because guests steal them, or what's the deal? And she says, no, something else, and changes the subject quickly. She's like, if there's nothing else, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to get some sleep. He's like, okay, weird, whatever. Doesn't really think too much else about it. The rest of the shift goes by without problems. The second night he works by himself, no problems. The third night he works by himself around 2 a.m. A guest comes down to the front desk and she's shaking. She seems pale. She seems off. She had already been a guest at the hotel. He did not check her in, but he looks at her. He's like, is everything okay? She's like, no. He's like really polite, but she's like, I'm sorry to bother you, but there is someone talking in my room. I think it's coming from the vents, and I think they're saying my name. I can't really make it out. I don't know where it's coming from. It must be the vents. Bill froze because he was like, this was literally on the sheet, and he's like, are there squatters living somewhere in this hotel that they know about and don't want to deal with? Like, what's going on? So he remembers what it says to document it but don't investigate, so he just offers to move her to another room. Makes her a key card for a room on a different floor, and he's like, okay, stay here real quick, I'm gonna go check on it, just make sure everything's good to go. He goes in the room, he comes back, and she's standing by the front office door where the Bibles are. And is on the knob. He's like, ma'am, I have your room ready. Like, you can follow me. I'll take you up there. She's like, I just want to see one page. And he's like, what? And she's like, there are Bibles in there, right? You have Bibles. Can I see one page, please? Looks at her. He's like, ma'am, we don't have Bibles. And she starts saying something to him, but then she stops and she looks around like she's listening for something. And she's like, do you hear them too? Said he stopped and was listening, but he didn't hear anything besides like the ice machine humming down the hall. He says, ma'am, come on, I'll take you to your new room. And she reluctantly follows him. He gets her checked in there. She's all settled, calmed down. He goes back to the front desk and he's sitting there for a little while, and then he gets a call light from one of the rooms, which was the room she had just checked out from. He answers because he's like, there should have been no one else in there. He said as soon as he picked it up, the receiver clicked like someone had hung up. He said he got freaked out at that point and he calls security. He's like, can you go check out this room? I think someone's in there. Security goes, they come back, they're like, the room's clear, there's nobody in there. He's like, okay. He quit 2 weeks later. Early morning, a guest checked out super early from that same room, some kind of traveler who seemed normal enough. Leaves, goes home, sleeps, comes back to work a little bit later for his overnight shift, and the manager's telling him don't check anyone into that room because housekeeping refused to clean it. Afternoon manager was complaining, saying there's nothing wrong with that room. She just said it smelled weird and we're going to have to find somebody else. Like, we're going to get rid of her. We're going to fire her. She's not doing her job. He's like, well, I'm going to go in there and try to figure out what the smell is. And the manager's like, okay, well, if you want to, you can. But I looked, there's nothing in there that smells. Like, I don't know what she's talking about. So he goes to the room. He said he got in there. Everything looked normal. The air conditioner was off, but it smelled fine. It smelled like a hotel room. He caught like a light whiff of something that had been burnt, but it smelled old. Like maybe somebody had been smoking in the room. Again, nothing too out of the ordinary. As he's about to walk out of the room to go back to the front desk, the vent catches his eye because it's been unscrewed on one side and is just slightly hanging. He goes over there, he stands on a chair to get into the vent, opens it up, and finds a half-burnt Bible inside the air duct. But I knew instantly that that's where that smell was coming from. So I reached in with a towel, I pulled it out, the cover was blackened, the pages were like melted together at the corners, but I opened it to one page that was surprisingly not burnt, and he didn't want to read it, but his eyes landed on the verse, and it was Luke 8:31, which said, and they begged them not to send them into the abyss. Bill said he got the worst chills as he read it. He wrapped the Bible in a towel, brought it back down to the front desk, showed the evening manager. She says, put it in the office with all the others. Unlocks the door to the office, and there's bins in the corner, which he had never looked in. He just thought it was like paperwork or other supplies or something. She opens one of the bins, and there's dozens of other half-burnt Bibles. But I just got a gut feeling something was wrong. I quit right then and there. I was not going to stick around to find out what was going on. The kicker, he goes back 2 weeks later to pick up his final paycheck, right? It's the evening manager working when he goes in. She tells him something strange. There's a bunch of maintenance people doing things to some of the doors and filing cabinets. He's like, what's going on? She's like, oh, corporate ordered new locks for all of the filing cabinets and doors because all of the Bibles went missing.
If you stay home alone because maybe your parents work overnight shifts, you might not want to listen to this story. I stayed home alone because my husband used to work overnight shifts and I used to hate it so much. Thankfully, he doesn't do that anymore. Also, I got these at Spencer's. So when this guy was in secundaria, which is like middle school here in the US, he used to stay up really late watching movies, YouTube videos, or anime. Both his mom and dad would sometimes have to work night shifts, which meant he would be home alone. His dad was a security guard at a mall and his mom was a cleaning lady at a hotel, and he wasn't really stressed or like troubled about staying the night by himself. So on one particular night, only the father was gonna work the overnight shift, so he went up to his son's bedroom, tells him, hey, I'm gonna leave for work, but don't worry because your mom's gonna be here soon. He says goodbye to his dad and continues to watch the movie that he was watching in his room, and I guess at some point he dozed off because he got awoken by a sound that was coming from the first story of the house. He screamed, hey, is that you, Mom? And said that for some reason the response made him feel very weird, but his mom did respond and says, yes, son, it's me. He was more asleep than awake, so he just decided to lay down and go back to bed. So again, he gets woken up because somebody is knocking on his door, and it's his mom saying, hey, open the door, I brought you dinner. Again, he is more asleep than awake, so he just says, I'll be there in a second, just give me a moment. That is when he hears his mom again say, son, open the door, I brought you dinner. And he just says, just leave it there, Mom, I'll be out in a second, I'll get it in a moment. He starts getting up, still half asleep, trying to, wake himself up to go have dinner with his mom. And as he's walking towards the door, he hears her again. Son, open the door, I brought you dinner. He was so tired that in the moment he didn't think anything of it, or he didn't think it was strange that she would say the same thing 3 times to him. Still sleepy, he's right at that door, and that is when he shocks himself awake. He wakes up fully because he remembered that minutes after his dad left, his mom had called him to tell him that she was not coming home that night because she took somebody else's shift that called in, so she wouldn't be seeing him until morning time. That's exactly what he was remembering when on the other side of the door, he hears somebody laughing. He said that the laugh was so diabolical, and the worst part about it is that the laugh really did sound like his mother's voice. He stayed paralyzed. He stood right outside the door. He said that he could hear the laughter getting farther and farther away from his door, and he could hear the heaviest of steps just going down the stairs, just one by one, almost like if this thing couldn't move fast, like something was very heavy, and still the laughter of his mom following. When he was finally able to move his body because he was still in shock, he literally jumped on the bed, covered himself, and just laid there. He couldn't fall asleep all night. Even in the morning, he did not leave his bedroom until he heard that his father got there. He immediately runs out of his bedroom, runs down the stairs, hugs his dad, and tells him what had happened. Of course, the father did not believe him, but instead tells him maybe you were having a nightmare, maybe you were having a dream. And honestly, he wanted to believe that because he didn't want him to believe that actually happened. The day went by like normal, and he explains how this never happened again, and he still did have to stay alone overnight, but I wouldn't be able to do it. There's no fucking way. You couldn't pay me to stay home alone after that. But he explains that when his parents do work overnight, he assures himself to lock the windows, lock the doors, locks the door to his bedroom, and does not come out. He says that there's nights where he has trouble falling asleep, or he has dreams of that voice, because yes, it's his mom's voice, but he could tell there was just something evil about it. He still thinks about it because he just wonders what would have happened if he had actually opened that door. What would he have seen? What would have happened to him? He's terrified at the thought or idea that something could have gotten him, or who knows. But what do you guys think?
I have another spooky story for you guys. Super excited about this one because this is the first vampire story that we've received so far. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to read to you the story that the person submitted to me. They do want to remain anonymous, so I will not tag them, but feel free to leave comments because they will see them as they check and watch this video. I know you might think I'm crazy, but I'm pretty sure I dated an energy vampire. Now I know how that sounds, trust me. I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't lived it. I used to think energy vampires were just a metaphor, like when people talk about toxic partners or narcissists who suck the life out of you. But after what I went through with Josh, quote unquote, names have been changed, I think some of them are real. I met Josh about 10 years ago. He had just moved to my tiny hometown from somewhere up north. Everyone else in my town had grown up together, married each other, divorced each other, or all three. So when Josh walked into the store where I worked, I was really intrigued. He was tall, soft-spoken, and charming in a low-key, old-world sort of way. He said please and thank you a lot. He held doors open, brought me flowers, specifically my favorite flowers, even though I never told him which ones I like. I remember thinking he was the most intuitive and sensitive guy that I'd ever met. Now, my friends, on the other hand, they clocked him right away. They weren't impressed by him at all. From the very beginning, they said there was something off about him. Not in the obvious sense, he didn't do anything rude or disrespectful, but it was more so that they said they got a strange feeling from him. One of my friends said that she felt weird when he was around. My best friend, Danny, told me she got cold every time he came over, almost like someone had opened up a window behind her. Another one of my friends, Marco, flat out said, I don't think that guy's human, and made jokes that Josh was actually a lizard person. I, of course, laughed it off and kept seeing him. After only a few months of dating, we actually moved in together. But after a while, I started noticing some strange things happening to me. I've always been a naturally bubbly person. I like to laugh, I like to host parties, I'll chat with random people in the grocery store line. That's just the type of person I am. But over time, it was almost like that version of me was slowly draining away. I started to feel more tired and irritable. I started canceling on my friends and eventually just stopped showing up when we had plans, even though I wanted to see my friends. It just felt easier to stay at home, away from people, except for Josh. Whenever Josh was having a bad day, which became more frequent as the months went on, he'd insist on only spending time together alone. He was a very touchy person and would specifically hold on to my wrist, my shoulders, or my lower back. He'd say things like, I just need your energy for a second, babe. You've got so much light. It's comforting. I thought it was sweet at first, but I noticed that after he touched me, I always felt wiped out, almost like I had just run a marathon or pulled an all-nighter. But Josh, on the other hand, he would brighten up instantly. There were these little things about him that were strange enough for me to notice, but not so much that made me want to break up with him. For example, he refused to go anywhere with me unless he was specifically invited by the host, so he'd never come with me as a +1. I found this out when we went to my cousin's wedding and I didn't tell him that he was my +1. Josh refused to come into the venue until I explicitly told him that he was invited and could come in. Later, when we got home, he told me to never leave him outside like that again. I was so confused because I didn't think I did anything wrong. This happened multiple times. He'd wait outside my apartment or my car until I said something like, come in, or you can get in now. If I forgot, he would just stand there smiling like it was a game, saying, I'm a gentleman. I don't enter uninvited. It's an old English custom. That just didn't sit right with me, so I tried looking it up, but there was nothing about an old English tradition. But there was some stuff about vampires. Of course, I thought this was silly, but something about it kind of resonated with me. So when I asked him more about this supposed old English tradition, he just deflected with some story about etiquette and propriety and being a gentleman. So I just chalked it up to weird quirks. I wanted to believe that he was just a little eccentric. There were moments when his face seemed different. That's hard to explain, but I'll try. Sometimes in certain lighting, when he was upset, his features would kind of blur. His cheekbones looked sharper, his skin looked paler, and his eyes seemed to get darker. And I don't just mean like he looked tired or the lighting was different so that made him look different. I mean, his eyes actually seemed to turn nearly black while I was staring directly into them. Every time it happened, it would only last a second, so I convinced myself that I was just seeing things. But there was a pattern. Whenever I had a particularly good day, like if I got a promotion at work, or went out dancing with friends, or spent the afternoon laughing with my sister, he'd get this almost hungry look in his eyes next time he saw me. He'd be extra affectionate. He'd want to hold me close, kiss my neck, stroke my arms. It felt like he was feeding off of my happiness. And every time he touched me, despite how happy I was, and without fail, I'd wake up the next morning feeling like death. My head was foggy, I felt nauseous, and just completely exhausted. About a year into our relationship, we started fighting a lot. He would gaslight me constantly over everything, even the smallest details that really didn't even matter. That's when I realized he was draining my energy. Based on how he was acting, I thought he might be a narcissist. But it wasn't until I started flinching away from his touch that things escalated. I didn't even realize I was doing it at first. Instinctively, I would shrink back and pull away from him when he tried to touch me. And every time he did that, I could see anger building behind his eyes. His compliments to me started coming with an edge. You used to be so affectionate. Or, I guess you don't need me anymore now that things are going well for you. Guilt became his favorite weapon. He'd sulk, go quiet for hours, and then one night he said, I just don't feel full in this relationship anymore. It was such an odd phrase that it replayed in my head for weeks. The last straw came one night after a friend's bachelorette party. We had so much fun and I was finally feeling like myself again. When I got home, Josh was already waiting. He grabbed me as soon as I walked through the door and tried to kiss me. I pushed him back and told him I was too tired and drunk and to just give me some space. He snapped. His eyes went black. His voice dropped to a strange, gravelly tone that I'd never heard from him before. And he calmly said, you don't get to pull away now. You opened the door, you let me in, and now I need you. The terror I felt after he said that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I sensed that something inhuman was standing in front of me, wearing a man's skin. The next morning, while Josh was at work, I packed up as much of my stuff as I could and left a note that just said, don't contact me, and left. I drove several states away to my sister's house and changed my number. 6 months later, I moved again just to be safe and set up a whole new life. Thankfully, I haven't seen him since. But sometimes, when I'm out with friends or feeling especially happy, I'll catch the faintest whiff of his cologne or feel the slightest touch against my wrist. I don't think I'll ever be fully detached from him, but for now, I'll take just never seeing him again. So what do you think about this guy? Leave your thoughts down in the comments and be sure to like and follow for more spooky stories.
Do not listen to this story, and I think this is the scariest one I've gotten so far for spooky scary story time. And honestly, I hate this story. When I read it, the hair on my arms was like standing on end, but I'm gonna share it anyway. Just watch it in the daytime, so save it for later if you need to, but literally don't watch it at night, because I did and it freaked me out. The story was submitted by this guy named Tom, who told me he wanted to tell me about his experience moving with his girlfriend during 2020. Tom is obviously not his real name. He wanted to be anonymous, but he will be reading the comments. So Tom and this girl, Michelle, are dating for like 3 years. They're living in a big city. I don't know which one, he didn't say. They live a really good, comfortable life. Tom works in IT, and his girlfriend, Michelle, is an instructor at a yoga studio, and they both do pretty well. They're both really healthy, really fit. They love being social, going out. No mental health issues at all, right? Tom also said that Michelle made a lot of money on social media. She was sort of an influencer, and she did a lot with different fitness brands, and she would film a lot in her studio. 2020 hits, and Michelle is immediately laid off because the yoga studio closed, but Tom was able to work remotely because he was doing that mostly anyway. Their apartment is really expensive, and their lease is coming up, and they basically decide that they want a quieter life because they don't know how long everything that was going on in 2020 was going to last. So they ended up signing a lease for a place that was about 50 minutes outside the city in more of like a rural area. He said it was still kind of suburban, like there were stores around and places for them to go and get groceries, like not super country, definitely not what they were used to in the city. And when they moved out there, they were really excited because it was a change of scenery for them, and they were saving money to buy a house. So rent was a lot cheaper, and they were both happy with the move. Everything's fine. Tom sets up his office. Michelle has the spare bedroom as her yoga studio where she's going to continue filming content, and things seemed perfect. A couple months after they move, Michelle decides that she wants to get into gardening. She was obviously already really into health and fitness and wellness, but she decided she wanted to be more into sustainability and was starting to like make more videos about sustainability. So she has Tom go in the backyard and basically dig a giant pit where they're going to start a compost pile. And Michelle's out in the yard and she's like planting some vegetables that she had gotten, and Tom calls her over because his shovel hits this like metal box. So she comes over to look, and they pull out this, he described it as maybe like a 12x6 just metal cash box. And it's all dirty and rusty, but they pull it up and Michelle opens it, and inside is a Ouija board. And Tom is immediately kind of like put off by this. Like, he doesn't really believe in that stuff, but he also doesn't like it. And Michelle's like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, I'm going to make some videos on this. And she takes it out and walks back up onto their patio with it and starts like dusting it off on their patio table. They kind of leave it out there, forget about it. And later that night, Michelle's like, oh, do you want to go play with the Ouija board? And Tom's like, not really. Like, you know, he said that they were really into Tiger King at the time. He just wanted to like watch that and hang out. And she was like more into going outside and playing with the Ouija board. So she's like, well, I'm just going to go play with it if you don't want to. And he's like, okay, whatever. And he just stayed inside and watched TV. The next day they wake up, Tom logs into his computer to start work. And Michelle, he said, was kind of just groggy, which was pretty out of character for her because she's normally pretty bouncy. She was a morning person. She would always wake up at like 6 a.m. with him. But she's just like slinking around the kitchen. And he's like, are you okay? And she's like, I just don't feel well. She's like, I don't think I'm going to make any content today. I think I actually have been like having the urge to paint. I'm going to go to the store and get some painting supplies. And he's like, okay, cool. He's working. She comes home with like a bunch of canvases and some paint. And she basically converts like half of her yoga studio into this painting area. And she spends the rest of the day doing that. The next day, same thing. She just wants to paint. She's not really feeling well, doesn't feel like making content, doesn't feel like doing yoga. This goes on for like a week, and one night he wakes up and she's not in bed. So
oh, my little buttercups, y'all need to buckle up. It is time for another scary follower story. This story comes from Ty, and let me say from the get-go that the way that she so vividly described this experience that she had in Virginia in 2021 had me locked in from the second that I started reading. It is one of those psychological thriller type of stories. I don't even know how else to describe it. And she said that it is something that will vividly live in her subconscious for the rest of her time on this earth. In 2021, Ty moved to Abingdon, Virginia. Now, she had never been to Virginia before, did not know where anything was, and other than a few major historical events, was not familiar at all with the area. From the moment that she moved into the condo that she was living in, she said that she was hearing things, seeing things, and had an overall uneasy type of feeling about that property. Just 2 days after moving in, a stray cat approached her and began rubbing on her legs and quickly seemed to get attached to her. Now, when her neighbors saw this, they looked at her in utter disbelief as they explained that this cat had not allowed anybody to approach him in 10 years, and that they were not only shocked that it was allowing her to pet it, but that it seemed as attached to her as it did. One of the neighbors even made a comment in passing that the cat must be her protector. Now, it is important to note that the ground on which the condo was located on was an area where brutal battles in the Civil War had taken place. Ty said that a few weeks after moving in, the paranormal activity in the condo seemed to increase, and she actually began having a repetitive dream about a little girl that was crying out to her for help. Now, if you live in a rural area, especially in the Appalachians, you understand that if you go outside at night, there is always noise. There are crickets, there are frogs. Ty said that sometimes she would go outside at night and it would be eerily silent. And she would look up and there would be a fog that covered the area that almost felt otherworldly. She said that oftentimes this fog would just appear out of nowhere. On one of these foggy, quiet nights, she looks up into a clearing in the trees where she learned later was the final resting place for many of those Civil War soldiers, and she sees the same little girl from her dreams. This little girl begins calling out to Ty, reaching toward her and asking Ty to come to her. Ty said that when she saw this, she became so out of nowhere overwhelmed with emotion that she started sobbing, hyperventilating, and the little girl disappeared. Almost the exact moment that the little girl disappeared, Ty's friend pulled into her driveway. Upon stepping out of the car, Ty's friend immediately notices that Ty is emotionally distressed and asks her if she is okay. Before Ty can even answer back, the friend pauses and says, "Something feels off." Ty responds to her friend,
in a way that was almost trance-like. She said that it was as if the words that she spoke were not her own, and she said to her friend, "I need to go. She needs my help, and they told me that you know where to take me." Now, this is very out of character for Ty, and she had never been through or done anything like this before, so this really baffles the friend and freaks her out. She is trying to tell Ty that it's not a good idea for them to go anywhere, but Ty is so overwhelmed and compelled by this emotion that she will not take no for an answer. So before long, they both get in the car and they start driving down the road. They both drove for a bit without saying a word, and before long, Ty began to get the sensation that they were close to their destination. Around this time, the friend quietly and without prompting pulls into a drive and goes around the back of what Ty now knows is a famous hotel with a lot of haunted history. I will put some screen caps here for reference. As they get around the back of this property, Ty shouts, "Stop here," and they come to a halt. Her friend, wide-eyed, visibly shaken, looks over at Ty and says, "Ty, do you have any idea where you just told me to stop or what that building is?" And she points over to this building that is shrouded in darkness. So Ty's friend, voice shaking, explains to Ty that the building they are parked beside is an area where a lot of bad things were rumored to have taken place. It was known as the carriage house or the slave house, and it's said that a lot of people were unalived or tortured on that property. After Ty's friend explains this, Ty hears the little girl's voice again and is immediately compelled to get out of the car and go look for the little girl. As she reaches for the door handle, Ty's friend says, "Please do not go. I have a really bad feeling." Ty brushes past it, and as she is about to open the door, the friend screams, "I am scared you won't come back." And at that exact moment, the street lamp that their car was parked under went completely out, and they are sitting in pitch black darkness. Now, this jarred Ty enough to kind of come back to herself, and she decides, you know what, maybe it is not a good idea, and they luckily do not get out of the car, and they leave the property that instant. The next morning, Ty goes to take some pie to her neighbor. The neighbor hadn't even been home the night before, and without greeting her like she normally would, the neighbor looks at Ty and says, "I don't know how to explain this, and I don't know where you went last night, but do not go back there." The neighbor goes on to explain that whatever it is not what Ty thought, and that it is trying to destroy her light, and that she needs to stay away from there. As the neighbor says, "Stay away," the pie plate that Ty is holding is launched out of her hand by an unnatural, unseen force. It slams onto the ground and it shatters into pieces. The neighbor looks up at Ty and said, "It didn't like me intervening." When Ty asked the neighbor how she even knew any of this, the neighbor explained that she had been having dreams that Ty was being lured by something that was dark, that was disguising itself as good when it actually was evil, and it had horribly ill intentions for her. The neighbor then asked Ty if anything that she saw was yellow, and Ty said yes, it was a little girl in a yellow dress that was trying to get me to help her. This made the neighbor visibly shiver, and she said, "I don't know what that was, but it was not a little girl." Ty, of course, never went back to that location after this bone-chilling experience, but there were nights after this that when she would step outside of her condo at night, she would smell the smell of death, and that this smell came from the area where this little girl used to stand and beckon to her. She said that the smell almost danced around her, caressed her, ran through her hair, and that when the smell would perfume the air, it would change the entire vibe. That is when that eerie silence, where there is not a cricket chirping, there is not a frog croaking, there is no wind, would cover the entire area and make it feel almost like she was not in the same reality anymore. The air would feel heavy and sticky and eerily still. Ty closed this story by saying that this was one of the scariest experiences she has ever been through, and that at times, while still living in this condo, she could almost picture what this thing was and feel it. She said that it felt ancient, unknown, not totally human, and that it was darkness personified. She said that she moved out of this condo not long after because she just did not feel safe living there anymore. That sums up our scary story for the day. If you have a scary story of your own that you would like to share, please feel free to comment or send me a DM. Stay tuned for more spooky stories.
So I have a creepy story that someone actually dropped in my comments on a previous video, and I wanted to share it as soon as I could because I just freaking love this one. Creepy story time. So she says she grew up in London, living at her nan and granddad's house. That because of being there with them, she would always see a lot of her aunts and uncles who would drop over and visit all the time. Her mother's youngest sister used to visit a lot, and they would always bring her something when they'd visit. So she absolutely loved when this aunt was there visiting. So one afternoon when she was around 8 years old, she said she was playing in the back garden. She just happened to look up at her bedroom window, and she said she saw her aunt standing in there looking out. She assumed it was her aunt because she had long dark hair just like she did. So she gave her a huge smile. So she's super excited for her aunt to be there. So she runs into the house and asks, why is she in my bedroom? And why didn't you tell me that my aunt is here? And quickly they told her, no, your aunt is not here. She's not coming for a few days. And she was like, no, she was in my bedroom. So she runs upstairs to prove it. And sure enough, her aunt was not there. She was super bummed out about it, and her mom said it was probably just a trick of the light or something, but that she just knew that it had to be her because of that long, dark hair. So fast forward now to when that little girl is now 17 years old. She had the afternoon off, and when she got home, she went straight up to her room. She was cleaning up and putting the laundry away, and she just happened to look outside of her bedroom window. To her surprise, she saw a young girl sitting outside playing with some dolls. She said she couldn't figure out who that could even be, as no one was visiting who had a small child, and there was no reason for a small child to be out there. She said that little girl looked up at the window, and she just got this huge smile on her face when she saw her. And in that moment, she realized she was looking down at 8-year-old her, as 8-year-old her was looking up at 17-year-old her. Oh my god, I have freaking goosebumps. That is so awesome. 8-year-old her just assumed it was her aunt and mistook her, and it was actually her own self. How freaking crazy is that? She said she hasn't really told many other people because it's just too crazy, but I mean, come on, that is so awesome. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. If you have your own creepy story, please submit it to the email in my bio. And as always, don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
This story's scary and a little far-fetched, but the more people that I've told, like in my real life, they're like, hey, you should tell that one because it's a good one. So I'm going to. While we were in Scotland, we were at this little restaurant. We're sitting outside at the table, and there was a couple beside us. So she had this really cute bag. I tell her, like, hey, I like your bag. Come to find out, she was from the States. We start chatting for a little bit because I will talk to anyone. And after about 15, 20 minutes of us, like, oh, like, where are you from? Like, what do you do for a living? Blah, blah, blah. The guy goes, hey, honey, should we tell her the story about that town? Yeah, what town? Like, tell me, I want to hear it. She looks to us and she's like, you guys are going to think that we're like weird or something. I've heard all kinds of stuff. Just tell it. He said that one time they were driving like across the U.S. and they stop in this little random town in the Midwest. And I cannot for the life of me remember what the name of the town is. Running low on gas, he said that he still had like a little bit left, but he didn't know like the area too well and he wanted to just go ahead and get some, but he had to drive into the town to get to the little gas station. Immediately the woman was like, have you seen Don't Worry Darling? And I'm like, yes. And she said it was giving huge Don't Worry Darling vibes. All of the lawns had like the fake grass. They all had the little white fences. She said that all of the cars were like exactly the same or kind of the same, but everyone there, all of the stuff looked completely alike. The guy parks the car, goes in to tell the attendant to like turn the pump on. The attendant won't turn the pump on. He's like, no, like you're not welcome here. You need to leave. He was confused and he was like, why? What? Like what's wrong? The guy said, well, we're out of gas. And there's a car out there getting gas. So he just kind of got like weird get out vibes. So he left. He said, we go about 20 miles to the next town and we're running on fumes at this point. We get to a gas station. I go in, I start making small talk, and I tell the guy about the town. The guy was like, oh, did you stop at blah, blah, blah? I can't remember the name. Yeah, no outsiders are welcome there, and here's why. Back in the 90s, some government experiment went wrong, something leaked or whatever, and like 80% of the town got super sick. And instead of just announcing, hey, we did this is our problem, like, we're sorry, and clean it up or whatever, they took all of the sick people out of the town in the middle of the night. They replaced them with genetically engineered people, not clones, not robots, like something else. The guy said, I can tell by the look on your faces you feel the same way about this that we did when we heard it for the first time. But the guy that worked at the gas station said that when he was a teenager, he would go with his friends, they would sneak into this little town or whatever to watch them, and they would all like eat dinner at the same time, turn their lights off all at the same time and everything, except for these like little onesie twosies of these 10% people that are left there. The story goes is that they're waiting for that 10% of people to pass away, and then they're just going to wipe the town out. But no one knows why they haven't just moved those people out and why they're still going on with this game. I don't know. Really hoping this reaches the right audience and someone out there knows the name of the town. Have you heard about this city? Could something like that actually happen? I don't know. It's scary. Like I said, far-fetched a little bit, but yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, honestly, it like creeps the fuck out of me still when I think about it. So growing up, I didn't really grow up with my grandparents. We would go visit them like when we went to Mexico and stuff, and on vacation. And I remember like really spending a lot of time with my mom's mom, but with my dad's mom, we hardly like ever spent time. And I remember my mom always being so cautious, like, be careful what you eat when you go to your grandma's house, don't get everything. But for some reason, my grandma had like a really, really like strong connection with me, I guess. I remember her always telling me like, oh, you look so much like your dad. But she would always kind of single my little sister out, like, oh, but your sister looks like your mom so much. And I remember she would like grab my face and be like, oh, you're so beautiful, you look just like my son. And so, me and my sister would joke around about it, like, oh, you're the favorite one, but I never really took it like, yeah, it was like whatever. So I used to work in a warehouse when my oldest daughter she was like a year and a half. And I had found out that just recently, like, I remember when I was working, I found out that then I was pregnant with my son. So I remember working a graveyard shift, and I remember not telling anybody because I work with mostly guys. And I'm like, they don't need to know about my business or whatever. And I must have been like a month pregnant. So I remember getting off of work, and I felt so uneasy, like I had a feeling, I don't know, like something bad was going to happen. And I remember I couldn't sleep. But before I even went to go lay down, I remember like looking at the end of the hallway, like I get there, right? And I'm going to go to my room, but the hallway was so dark. And I remember like I was about to turn on the light, and I stayed looking at the end of the hallway. And I remember seeing this really dark, like a human figure, right? And I got so like tripped the fuck out. I was like, what the fuck is that? And I turn on the light, and there's nothing there. So then I try to go to sleep or whatever. And mind you, I must have slept for like 2 hours. And then I had this sudden urge to like call my mom. So I remember I called my mom, and I was like, hey mom, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm so glad you called. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, your grandma just passed away. And I remember I was like, what the fuck? And I told my mom what had happened, how I had seen that figure at the end of the hallway. And my mom jokingly was like, oh, she probably want to say goodbye to you. She probably, Dios su despedida, like said her goodbyes. And it kind of stuck with me, right? So mind you, remember I work graveyard at this warehouse. And so I remember walking into HR office. And I wish I could see this girl. I wish I could reach out to her, or she could reach out to me if she ever were to see my videos. I remember walking into the HR, and she's like, hey, like try to approach me. She's like, can I tell you something? But I don't want you to feel uncomfortable what I'm going to tell you. And I'm thinking in my head, what the fuck is she going to tell me? And I remember she's like, oh, it like terrifies me when I think about it, because everything that happened after was so fucking scary. I remember her like telling me, it's gonna sound awkward, blah blah. Cut the story short, she's like, somebody walked in with you. And I'm like, the fuck? I walked in by myself, She's like, no, it was an older lady that just passed away. And I remember looking at her like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she's like, starts describing my grandma to me. When she told me this, I felt like my heart dropped, I'm like, how the fuck does she know? And so she tells me that, and then she's like, but she can't rest. Like, she needs to tell you something. And I'm like, tell me what? Like, you can't tell me? You know? And she's like, no, like, your grandma needs to tell you. And I remember I was like, no, like, I don't want her to come to me. Like, how is she gonna come to me in a dream? Like, I was starting to trip. Because, mind you, when my grandma passed away, the way I remember her, like, no, I was so terrified, honestly, when she passed away. Like, I didn't want her to come back to me like that. She was very old already when she passed away, but her skin was so fragile. Like, if you picked her up, like, literally her skin would rip wherever she was, like, picked up from. So she's like, she's gonna come to you, blah blah. And I'm like telling her, like, no, like pleading, like, no, I don't want her to come to me. Like, I sound like a crazy person. And so she's like, but she's not coming to you right now, you know. And she's like, when you have your son. When she told me that, I was already tripping, you know. This just like threw me overboard, right? And so she's like, yeah, when you have your son. I hadn't told anybody I was pregnant, let alone I didn't even know what I was having. So I remember every night, like, praying to God, like, please don't let her come to me, please. I'm terrified of her. Like, I don't want her to come. God, like, I would pray for her every night. Like, I was literally terrified of her. And the day comes where I have my son, right? So I'm continuing to pray every night for her, like lighting candles for her. And I'm like, please don't come. Please don't ever come. I don't care what you did. Like, I don't want to know what you have to tell me. Like, why are you choosing me? Like, choose somebody else. Like, and I remember telling the same girl that told me that, and I'm like, can she choose somebody else? Like, and she's like, no, because she knows you're strong and you're going to be able to handle what she's going to tell you. And that stuck in my head. And I remember just like losing it, to be honest. And I don't know, I felt like so uncomfortable my whole pregnancy because I just was waiting for her to arrive. So I ended up having my son. And at that time, my daughter had her own room, but she would sleep in a little toddler bed in my room. So the toddler bed was right next to my bed, and I remember like breastfeeding my son. Tell me why. This is when I think about it, it's so terrifying, to be honest. Like, I really hope she doesn't ever come back. Because my daughter's sitting in her toddler bed, and she kind of like sits up, and she's like not fully awake, right? So she's sitting up, and her eyes, they're like not open, but she's like, I don't know if she's trying to open them or rolling back, but I'm tripping the fuck out. I see her sit up, and then she's like, Kukui, kukui. Bitch. Kukui? You know, I'm like, kukui, and I'm like calling her name, like, wake up, wake up. But let me give you a little background. When my daughter, when I was changing my daughter's diaper, right, we had a picture of my grandma in a spare room at my mom's house. And I remember how she like looked up at the picture, and she was like, kukui, kukui, pointing at my grandma's picture. And I'm like, kukui? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, kukui is like something scary, right, in Spanish. And I'm like, telling like my mom, come here, look what she's saying. And mom's like, what the fuck? Like, why would she say that? So when my daughter sat up in the bed and she was saying that, in my heart, I knew it was my grandma. And I was like, I can't do anything for you, you know, like, I'm not the person. But it made me so angry to think that she was like going after my daughter. So I like start cussing a storm, you know, and like, get the fuck out of my fucking room, blah blah. Like, my mom has always told me, like, if you see something, a spirit, like, you're supposed to curse it, right? Curse at it, and supposedly it leaves. I don't know if it's true, but it worked. Like, when I said that, like, I remember as I was saying it, I could see my daughter's eyes, like, her whole, like, her eyes, her head, everything started turning, like, to the side. Oh my god, it's so fucking scary when I think about it. It started like turning and turning, like as if it's like watching this thing walk out of the room. I literally fucking died in that second. And I'm like, I start tripping the fuck out, you know? And I'm like, you know, calling my daughter's name. I'm like, wake up, you know, wake up. Mind you, she's like 2 now. And I'm like literally so pissed off. And like, I start crying, and I'm like holding my daughter, and I'm like holding my son, you know? And I'm like, why would you come? I was more pissed off at that. I'm like, why would you come and scare my daughter? or like I felt like she was being selfish, even though it was like her afterlife. Because after my grandma passed, like a lot of things surfaced about things that she did, like while she was alive, like that she was to like black magic, and she did a lot of things to people that she shouldn't have done. You know, my mom being one of them. So, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking like, dude, she fucking did something really bad, and she wants me to go, you know, take care of it for her. Like, no. After that, I had one more encounter happen, but when that happened, I would start dreaming of her, but I never would see her face, you know? Like, my dreams were always, I know it was her, because that same scary feeling that I got when I felt that thing come into that room that night, I would wake up literally screaming, terrified from these nightmares I would have of her. Yeah, they're not even dreams, they're nightmares. Where she would just be sitting in this black room. Not black, she would be all black. This dark room. And she would kind of cackle, like laughing at me. And when I would wake up, I would be so fucking terrified. You know, I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, I know it was my grandma, but whatever she did, I know it must have been something really bad. But I literally, I like asked God for her to never come to me. Like, I prayed so much, I pray for her soul. But it's just when I have those dreams of her, and I haven't, like, honestly, I would have them so, like, one after another. But now it's been like, probably like, it's been like a year that I haven't dreamed of her. And like, honestly, before I go to sleep, I always like try to pray and like pray that nothing ever comes, you know, or nothing ever, I think it's a cricket, or nothing ever like, or she just doesn't ever come back or try to haunt us, to be honest. Because I have a feeling that whatever she needed to tell me was something really bad. And I know that girl told me that I would be able to withstand what she was going to tell me, but something tells me it was just terrifying. Like I said, I would love to find that girl, you know, that used to work in HR, and just like I have so many questions for her. But yeah, that was one of my experiences with the ghost. I mean, I've had plenty of experiences, but this one is one that literally traumatized me. And within the years, as my daughter got older, like, I learned that she too would see things, you know, or she would feel things. Like when I dream of her, when I dream of my grandma, or when I dream of her, my daughter dreams of her. And my daughter's so terrified, and, you know, my daughter will wake up and she'll be like, Mom, like, she's so scary, like the way she comes in my dream. But I think I get afraid sometimes, thinking like, if she didn't get through to me, will she try to get through to my daughter?
The creepiest mimic story that I ever heard was from a kid I went to school with. Now, he said his house, like, he never felt it was haunted, like there was never weird things that happened, and there was no like history behind the house. But one night, his grandmother comes to his house to babysit him, and he's up late. It's like 11:30 at night, and he's in his bedroom. And as he's sitting in his bed, he hears his door open, you know, slowly, and it opens up, you know, a couple inches, and he can see his mom staring at him from outside the door, and she's just like waving at him and smiling. And he's thinking like, why? I thought my mom was gone for the night. That's why my grandma's watching me. Like, and why is my mom just staying? So he's like, Mom, what are you doing, Mom? And then she closes the door really slowly. So he gets up and he opens the door, and he starts like going through the house like, Mom, Mom. And he goes to the front door and opens up the front door and sees that his mom's car isn't there. And this alerts his grandma, who gets up and is like, Hey, what are you doing? Where are you going? And he's like, Well, I thought Mom was here. She just like came in my room. And she's like, No, your mom's not home. And he's like, Well, I've just seen her open my door and look in my room and wave at me. And the grandma like just had this terrified look on her face, like she felt like something wasn't right. So she said, go back to your room and just pray before you go to bed. So he went back to his room and he said a little prayer and he went to bed. And like 2 days later, he gets off of school and he is in the living room. And all of a sudden, he hears the basement door open up. And he hears like, hey, his name being called and, come here. And he thinks, okay, maybe my mom needs my help to get something out of the basement. he goes over to the basement door and he sees his mom just standing there, and she's like smiling and she's waving at him to like come down in the basement. And just then he hears the front door open. It's his mom. Like, she just got off work and is like, is everything okay? And he's like, I thought you were down in the basement. And she's like, no, I'm not in the basement. So his mom's like freaked out. She goes down in the basement. Well, he, ends up hanging out with his grandma again, and he tells her about this, what had happened. And he said, like, I've seen her in the basement again. And so, like, his grandma, like, gives him this really old German Bible. It says, I want you from now on, just keep this in your bedroom and every night read from it. And he said after he started doing that, like, it stopped.
Okay, so I grew up in a haunted house, and this is something that used to happen to me when I was a little girl that I remember. Okay, so picture it. I'm in bed. I'm sleeping. It's the weekend. Okay, it's Saturday morning. I'm taking my time waking up because, hey, it's Saturday morning. Now, my mama, she used to make a big breakfast on the weekends. I'm talking grits, eggs, bacon, sausage, biscuits. She'd make pancakes, everything. She would throw down in that kitchen on the weekend, okay? Because my family, we had a farm and they expect us to get out there and work, okay? So they would feed us. Anyways, so I'm laying in bed, enjoying the morning, and I hear what sounds like my mama in the kitchen. And you know what your mama sounds like in the kitchen, right? So I can hear it, and I hear my mama. I'm thinking, dang, my mom's up there cooking. I hear sounds like as if she's washing dishes. I hear like she's washing specifically like silverware, and she's like putting it in to like the dish drainer because we didn't have a dishwasher. So I'm like hearing those noises. I'm hearing the stove. I'm hearing the sizzle of bacon. I'm hearing all kinds of mixing noises. I'm not hearing the TV on. And my mama, she always had to have Law and Order on when she was cooking, okay? I'm not hearing that. And I'm also not hearing any of my brothers awake. And I'm not hearing my mama talking. And my mama talks more than I do, okay? So she's always on the phone with somebody. I'm not hearing none of that. But I am hearing all those other sounds. And I'm smelling smells like bacon. I'm smelling all kinds of good smells, right? So finally, I think, dang, I'm about to get up because I'm going to get up for my brothers do, and I'm going to get me a piece of bacon before they get up. So I get up, I put my bedroom shoes on, open my bedroom door, and I walk down the hall. When I get to the living room, because I can see the kitchen from the living room, I remember being so scared and so panicked, literally feeling like my stomach was coming out my butt. Because guess what? There's nobody in the kitchen. There was nobody in the kitchen. Not a soul was up in the house. My mama was not up. The lights in the kitchen was not on. All the lights was off. Everything was just how it was when I went to bed. So I'll go to my mama's room and I knock on the door. And I go in there and I see my mama and my daddy fast asleep. I ran back to my bedroom, closed the door and locked it. And I did not come out of my room until my mama came and got me because she wanted to know what the heck I was doing in my room that late. Yeah. Just one of the many things that happened in our house that we grew up in that was haunted.
The creepiest thing happened to us last night, and I need y'all's opinion. My husband had planned a date night last night, and I called him letting him know that I was on my way home to drop off some stuff, and then I will be on my way to go pick up the kids. He said okay, but he said that he had noticed a very large nail in one of our tires. He said he would be driving to Walmart to buy a plug to plug the tire, and then he'd come home. My mom had taken my kids to a birthday party, so I was on my way to the party to pick up my kids. And while I'm there, my husband tells me that on his way to Walmart, he somehow got a razor blade stuck on the same tire where he had already gotten a nail in. He literally said, it's okay. I'm going to change the tire to the spare tire. We're not going to let this ruin our night. Everything's fine. We're still going to go out tonight. I was like, okay. My mother-in-law was going to watch the kids for us, and I was on my way to her house. And as I'm getting my son down, he is burning up in a fever. I was at this birthday party for a while, and he was literally fine. He was playing, he was eating, he was perfectly fine. But now that I was ready to drop them off for about an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours, he was burning up in fever. So I called my husband and I'm like, hey, we're not going nowhere tonight. Something is weird. Our son has a fever. We're not going nowhere. I get home last night and sure enough, he has a fever. This was his temperature last night, and this is the tire in question. Right there is the nail that my husband first got, and that right there is the razor blade. How did this happen? So what was going on? Was there something, someone, was it the universe, something trying to prevent us from going somewhere? Because first it's the nail, then the razor blade. My husband was adamant. He's like, it's okay. Nothing's going to ruin our night. I'll change the tire, everything's fine. And if you know me, you know that if my children are sick, I'm stopping the world. I'm calling in. I'm not going nowhere. I need to tend to my children. And lo and behold, my son gets a fever out of nowhere. What do you guys think? Do you think this is a coincidence? You think the universe or something was trying to get us not to go anywhere? Let me know what y'all think.
Do you guys want to hear a scary story? This is actually one of my own personal scary stories. I usually tell scary stories about the house I used to babysit at because it was super haunted, but this one is actually one from my home. This is a little quick one, but this is why I don't like looking in reflections of mirrors or TVs. I make sure I cover all my mirrors at night, and I just don't like to look into like the black glare of a TV when it's off. I get very edgy because of this, well, among other experiences that I had. So this is a quick story. I was 8 years old at the time. I was living in Prescott with my family, obviously, and I had so many paranormal experiences that were dark and scary from such a young age in this house. Can't even tell you guys. But one in particular that would really scare me, I'd see the ghost of an old woman a lot in my house. And scary looking old woman. Like, you know, the Gladys vibes from Weapons, or the one from Insidious. Like, just those traditional, scary looking old women. But this, I don't know what this hair is doing. One of those very scary, unsettling, older looking Uncanny Valley women. However, with this entity I saw in my house, I never saw her face close, but I saw her face often, if that makes sense. So I couldn't make out certain details and descriptions with her all the time. I just remember she was an old woman. So one night, 8, like I said, and I remember I went out into our kitchen, was like connected to our living room. So you walk in the kitchen, and then it's like the living room, and then the end living room was our TV. So I walk into the kitchen to get something to drink or eat. I don't really remember what I was going for. Like I said, I was 8 years old. This was 20 years ago. And I walk into the kitchen, and it just feels dark, spooky, unsettling. I hate every part of it, right? And I remember I was trying so hard not to look up because I felt like I was being watched, and I was so used to seeing unsettling things. Like I was so scared all the time. I didn't want to see everything. And so anyways, I finally get whatever it was I'm getting. And I remember this part so vividly. I look up into like the reflection, like I look up and I see the reflection of the TV, and I'm looking at it, and I'm squinting because from behind me, like about 10 feet behind me, like not right next to me, I see my own shadow, and then behind me, silhouette of the old woman, and she's just standing behind me. And as I cannot break eye contact with what I'm seeing in the TV, she slowly, I hate even telling the story. She slowly starts walking towards me, but it was like she was dragging her body in the shadow. Like it was so not proportionate, and just looked like she was in pain and like struggling to move her body. And then I remember an arm from her shadow reached up, and I screamed. I turned around. I didn't see anything when I turned around. Oh, sorry. I looked back up, turned it like the other way after I just looked behind me, back into the reflection of the screen of the TV, and I see this silhouette standing damn near on top of me, like right next to me. And I remember that night I ran into my sister's room, and I couldn't even get out what was happening or what I just saw. Like I felt crazy, but I could not sleep. That was one of my first times I remember in my life like staying up all night, especially as a child, especially when it's on a sleepover or anything. Like I did not sleep. I would not open my eyes. I refused to open my eyes, but I could not bring myself to fall asleep. And after that, I have had other experiences that are a little similar, but I've been terrified to look into the glare of anything. So before you look into your TV when it's off or a mirror, just make sure you're ready for anything you could possibly see.
The story is actually from my dad, and it still gives me goosebumps. Back when he was a kid, he lived in a small house in Las Cruces, New Mexico, with his family. One night, his parents went out dancing and left all the kids at home. It was my dad, 3 of my tios, and 2 tias. That night, around 9 or 10 p.m., one of my tios, let's call him Manuel, went outside to throw out the trash in their neighbor's yard. While he was out there, he saw something strange. The neighbors were elderly people, so it was weird when my tío saw something moving near their place. He ran inside and told everyone what he saw. They all rushed to the window to look, but none of them could see anything, except for my dad. My dad said he saw a black shadowy figure with a triangle-shaped head and something like an elephant trunk or horn coming from it. It scared him so much, he immediately called the neighbors to let them know someone strange was outside their house. The older man next door came over and asked my dad to walk with him to follow the weird tracks that were left in the ground. My dad agreed, grabbed his shoes and a flashlight, and they went off to check it out. As they followed the tracks, both of them felt a bad, heavy vibe. The tracks led them all the way to a small bridge nearby. The old man decided to look under the bridge to see if whatever it was might be hiding there. The moment he looked under, he collapsed to the ground. He had a heart attack right in front of my dad. My dad ran home and called the police. Rest his soul, the man didn't survive. To this day, my dad doesn't know what the man saw under that bridge, but whatever it was, it scared him to death, and my dad never wanted to know.